get is y'all don't know anything about racing. This is true. You're right. You're in the wrong show.
Yeah.
You're watching the wrong show if you want to hear like super engineer stuff.
What's up, everybody? It's Professional Jazz here on Hit the Apex. I'm back, everybody. Hello.
Dude decided to show up to the show.
Yeah, man. When I say everybody, by the way, I mean the whole Sones family. Hey.
Hey, you forgot.
And Brandon.
Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon. There you go, man. No, he did not. But I will say this, as it says here on the bottom, it says Max Verstappen. Jesus Christ. Max Verstappen. This what happens when we do early shows. Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen inches closer to the World Drivers' Championship, courtesy of the Men in Red. You guys are welcome. You're welcome, Max. You're welcome. However, Red Bull is in jeopardy of falling down to the number 3 spot in the Constructors' Championship because it looks like, Ferrari's doing a hell of a job lately, man, with both Leclerc and Sainz. Leclerc and Sainz look really fast the whole weekend, and they proved to be pretty damn good. I know it was an interesting race over there in Circuit of the Americas. So we'll get your take as I pick up this phone call. Vish, go ahead and take it away, my man.
All right. Well, yeah. I'll I guess we'll start with kind of how this race weekend went. As Jazz said, Ferrari dominated. So Evan, I'll just start to you. What was your take on the weekend's festivities?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of went a little bit against what we were thinking. We were thinking there was going to be a real dominant performance from Lando coming off of his last race. But Ferrari did a great job, man. They took advantage of the opportunity that they had right in the beginning of the race. With Lando kind of giving up that opening spot, and then you could just see the pace difference between Max not quite being able to keep up with them, but then being fast enough and lucky enough, I guess you could say, to stay ahead of Lando all the way until the very end with how the strategies all played out. But overall, you got to give it up to Ferrari. They were both up there. They weren't fighting with each other. They were running their race and how they wanted to run it. And you see it in the results, leading Max by 20 seconds at the end of it after, Lando's penalty and everything. But, either way, they had a great race, and it's good to see them get up there and have a solid race at this type of racetrack, that's, more traditional style Formula One circuit, not something that's more specialized. So hands down, or hats off to them, Ferrari, it's good to see another team up there with Red Bull, with McLaren, have a good dominant weekend, or a good dominant race at least.
Vish, I got a question for you. Are you surprised at all at how fast they were, considering they haven't, if I'm not, correct me if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, but they didn't bring any upgrades to Austin. I think they ran the same specs that they have in the previous 3 or 4 races. They've been pretty quick in those 3 or 4 races. You've seen them podium. I think it's every single one. I'd have to check that. You could probably.
Well, no, I think Singapore. I mean, there was a 3-week gap. But I think Singapore is the one where they had the disaster where they effed up the qualify. But before, I think one was a track limits deletion, so disqualified, time didn't count, and then they messed up the start of the race. But in the practice sessions, they were on the pace there. They won in Monza,
right?
So they've kind of been slowly kind of re-getting their footing. Remember at the beginning of the year, they were, Leclerc was pretty consistently getting on the front row, if not pole,
right?
And they just couldn't convert it. So they're kind of resuming back where they were a little bit at the beginning of the season. It's hard to there's so many races now that's like hard to remember what we were thinking back in like April and May. But there was a time where there was a time where Max kept winning from second and third, and we were talking. Remember, we spent a lot of time talking about how good their DRS was, so you couldn't keep him behind.
Yep.
But that second or third that he was starting from was because Ferrari was out qualifying him. So that it is kind of normalizing a little bit for them.
Yeah, are you surprised though that they haven't really had any updates, right, or upgrades in a little bit, but they're still out there and they're still pretty damn fast.
I mean, the tracks are all different. This one suited them, it appears. So we'll see if that continues forward through to Mexico this week. So we'll see.
We got 7 races left now, 6, 7 races, something like that.
5.
Jesus, wow.
One sprint weekend, I think, left too.
Oh yeah. Wow. Okay. So, I guess we can talk about who are, I guess our top 3 finishers, as you mentioned, Leclerc, Sainz, and then Verstappen, all drove really well the whole weekend. I mean, so did Lando for the most part, but I just think he made that mistake at the beginning, and obviously gave for
at some point we got to talk about the stewarding because it was totally
that penalty was crap. Yeah.
Well, no, it's not even that it was necessarily crap, because you could argue that Max was ahead at the apex, and therefore when they both went off track, which they did, Lando has to give the place back because he's the one who gained an advantage, which is what the rule is written as. However, the reason I'm saying we got to talk about the stewarding generally is we saw several times 2 drivers go into the corner exactly that way. Sometimes the driver on the inside got a penalty. Sometimes the driver on the outside got the penalty. Sometimes there was no investigation needed. And there was really just zero consistency across the board. That first corner, Lando should have slammed the door and basically pushed Max into the wall, I guess. But, the way Max took that corner, he went off the track and basically was like, I'm not going to let Lando pass me. We're both going off, which is why the 2 Ferraris are just like, well, that made our life easy. But also, that's not fair driving from Max, right? You're supposed to leave a car's width. He basically went straight through the corner, and the only way Lando was going to get through is to hit him.
Right.
Now, he didn't care that that's going to compromise his race and let the Ferraris through because, again, this is something we criticized McLaren for, which Max is well versed in, is like, I'm racing one guy. I'd rather finish third and have him finish first than finish second and have him win. So I'm racing the one driver. I don't give a shit what happens behind that.
Right.
And that kind of narrow, ruthless focus, that's Tap saying it's not there. It was not there from Lando. Is 100% there from Max. And you saw that, and that he's just like, I'm going to go straight. I'm not making this turn, but neither is he. And at the end of the day, that's all I care about, and let the Ferraris go through. I don't care. And he did it again later. He's basically, I'm going to make him hit me if he's going to overtake me. I'm going straight, or I'm going to make the stewards give me a penalty. I'm not letting him through. Right. And in McLaren's defense, I think, they're asked why didn't you let him back through. It's like, we thought Max was they don't say who's under investigation. And based on some of the penalties some of the other drivers got, they're like, well, they said investigation. We assumed it was Max because he drove straight through the corner and pushed us off. So that had been a penalty for other drivers. So we thought they were under him, and then they gave us the penalty. So
this is a case of how we always talk about it in football and in other sports, right? Don't leave the decision up to the referee. Just kind of take things into your own hands and then worry about it after. That's not what Lando did. That's what Max did, like you said. He said, "Screw it."
I think the other thing, I think Lando almost opened up the 5-second gap he would have needed to absorb the penalty. He could have probably pushed a little bit hard. Like right when that happened, McLaren's initial thing was, it's not going to be a penalty on us for sure. And they should have been, just in case we need 5 or 6 qualifying laps now. Yeah. Open that gap up because he had.
I don't know if he had those I don't know if he had those laps left in him at the very end of the race. And I was even listening to everybody talk about how he should have let him pass and stuff like that, and he should have just tried to overtake him afterwards. Man, he wore those tires out. You watch those last few laps before that lap or before that incident happened. Lando was pushing that car. You saw him get within 4/10 of a second, 3/10 of a second, and then as soon as you go into those S's right after turn one, he was dropping back to 6, 7, tenths right after that. So, I the thought process of oh yeah, just get ahead of him and then open up that gap. That's going to be real tough for him there, and that's why I think that at that point when he did do that, he was like, I'm just going to stay in front because I don't think he even thought he could get past him.
Yeah,
on
and
the other
and,
part.
and Christian Horner was like, I don't understand why I just let him back through. He could have passed him at, like you said, it was a job to get in front of him, and also, like again, whether or not it's fair or not, what was going to happen when he tried to pass him again is the same thing.
Exactly.
Max was going to drive straight through the corner again,
Right.
and he was going to have to either turn into his side pod or go around him on the outside. So, I do think he needed to probably push a little bit more on those laps. He did open up a 4+ second gap, but not enough to take away them. If you look at where they finished, it was less than a second with the 5-second penalty. So nearly got there. Needed probably another lap or two to Evan's point. But I didn't hear any communication from them saying, hey, push. You need to be on the limit. Of course, he was also in danger of track limit penalties. So there's always so much you can do on the limit there. But I thought that was the one mitigation they could have done. But I agree with you. I think if he gives the place back, he's not getting it back.
Yeah.
It took too much effort to do it in the first place. It wasn't obvious that he was gonna get it back. So I think they probably did the right thing, leaving him there and just hoping that, again, the stewards were all over the place. So it's almost like a coin flip who they were going to penalize. It was him.
Yeah, there was an incident earlier in the race with your boy, George Russell, where he did almost the exact same thing. They had pictures of it all over social media, this past few days, where it's like the exact same look. George Russell went off. I think he was up against Colapinto or one of the Williams, and he pushed him the same distance, the same spot, the exact same corner and everything. And George Russell got the penalty for it, and he was the one on the inside, the same spot as Max Verstappen was.
Yeah, and he was about the third or fourth person, I think, that did that exact same move, and all of a sudden he got a penalty, which is why he justifiably on the race was like, what? Everyone else had done that. No one had done anything, and then all of a sudden they gave him a penalty. And he's like, how is this a penalty now? It's complete crap. I mean, it's what it is. Just like all of a sudden they said, we're going to penalize that, but then, again, sometimes it was the guy on the outside that got the penalty instead, so it didn't really make sense, so. It probably, from McLaren's standpoint, look, you probably lost the place anyway if you give it back, so you might as well roll the dice on the penalty.
And Max has done the same thing before in other races where it's just like, I'm just going to stay in front, and if they penalize me, they penalize me. If they don't, they don't.
Even he has the advantage of, and obviously this didn't work out for Lando, but when you're ahead in the championship, double DNF is fine.
Yeah.
Like on that first corner, if Lando's close the door and they crash out together, that's a win for Max. Mm-hmm. That's one less race where he loses points.
Agreed.
So you have that advantage when you're winning the championship. You can put your car somewhere and say, hit me if you want. We'll both DNF, and then you're running out of races. So
unless Leclerc catches up
to Max.
I'm joking. I'm just
there is some fun in the constructors though that we're gonna talk about.
Oh yeah,
it does look like fun. Driver of the day though. Who's your driver of the day?
Go ahead.
I'm going George. Funny enough, I'm going George Russell. I know we get on him sometimes in this, on this show, but he started in the pit lane, ended up in 6th place. I mean, how can you not give the man, some props for that? Yeah, I think he did a good job overall, racing hard and being smart on the strategy. And, and with what ended up happening with Lewis, being the Mercedes out there that's in the lead or that's up there in the top 10, getting some points out of a start from the pit lane, you got to give him props for that.
That was a good race run. What do you got?
That was actually mine as well, George Russell. Yeah. In addition to what Evan said, we just talked about this, but that penalty is complete bullshit. In the past, he has not kept his nerve. And other than be like, basically, he said what instead of what the fuck, which is what he was thinking. he just kept his head down. He went in the pit, ate the penalty, even though he shouldn't have had to, and then ended up running down Sergio and passing him. Checo in a faster car, starting from the grid, and he beat him. Yep. That is an impressive drive. And I will say, just to add to that, at the beginning, those hards took a long time to get warmed up. and grip in, and he maintained, and he actually made up places while that was happening, which is what allowed him to do all that. Really great drive.
I'm guessing Jazz's driver of the day is somebody in a red car.
I mean, someone's got to do it.
Colapinto, man.
Oh, look at you!
Come on now, that the kid has what 4 races under his belt now, and he scored I think in 2 races in a row if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure.
How about him and Liam Lawson?
Yeah, Liam Lawson hopping right into the.
I could probably say both of them, right? Liam Lawson and Franco Colapinto.
The rookies.
Solid racing by the Williams there. Him finishing ahead of Alex Albon.
We're gonna be having conversations about Albon, and once Sainz is in that team, I think we have an overrated situation here.
That's gonna be It looks like. Listen, look how well he raced, right? That means that car, that machine has got something, right? It's got some speed. It's pretty quick. It's quick in the straights. It's got its issues. It's obviously not a top 3 type of machine right now. But if you put a guy like Sainz in a Williams, I think it's going to be more competitive than people think. And I don't know about Albon, but I was going to say if you put Sainz and Colapinto in that car.
Colapinto's looking for a drive next year, and he's kind of earning one. So we'll see what.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Yeah. So hats off to him. He's doing a great job. Now, the disappointment for me of the day, I'm just gonna come out and say it. You guys kind of mentioned him a little bit. Is Sergio? I mean, he's not that dude, man. He's not it. And Max is doing everything he can. But let's be honest, man, right? Like you've got at McLaren, you've got Lando and Oscar, who, although they kind of have their thing, they help each other out, right? And they're able to feed off of one another. They're able to, maybe one gets a little bit of a boost. There's a lot of different things that they're doing there as a team. That's right. Leclerc and Sainz are obviously battling. They want, they're P1 and P2 this week. And they help each other out at times as well. You're not getting that with Red Bull. Sergio Checo's on an island, looking at the stars, twiddling his thumbs in the corner, and Max is trying to do everything he can to win the constructors, to win the world championship. He gets no help from his teammate, and that's got to be frustrating for Max, especially when he has the second fastest car on the grid. Right, you gotta be better than that. I think Checo's disappointing, man. I know he ended up at 7th, but that's a car that should be in the top 4, top 5 at all times, and that's just the bottom line. I think it's just disappointing. His whole season has been disappointing, but I think when there's a race like this that Max needs all the points he can get, you gotta have a team that's going to be able to help you out as well, and he just doesn't have that right now.
Yep. It's hard to argue with Checo. I'm going to go with Brandon mentioned him, Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, that's another one.
Get out in Q1.
Yeah.
And then just immediately puts a few laps into the race, throws in the gravel trap. He's done. Hard to have a worse weekend than that.
That's true. I agree. What about you, Evan?
My disappointment for the day has got to be Lando. I mean, he ended up in 4th, but I'm sorry. How many times are we going to see this? The beginning of the race, he starts off and he just moves the car so far over to defend over against, whoever it is, whether it's Oscar, whether it's Max, whether it's somebody, Charles. He tries to move over and it messes his race up. It messes the start of these races up. He dropped from 1st down to 4th and he just couldn't recover for the rest of the race, having to push himself to his absolute limit. Driving wise at the very end to try to do something to get ahead of Max, and ended up, leaving in the steward's hands and having him get that penalty. So it's like, I'm tired of seeing this as a Lando fan. I want it to be aggressive, but I want him to drive his race. Start the race off. Don't let the other drivers dictate what you're doing. You dictate where you go. You put your car where you want to put it. If they got to move out of the way, then they got to move out of the way. That's what Max Verstappen does. He knows where he's going. He knows what part of the turn he's going to hit as soon as he goes, and he doesn't deviate from it. But every single time you see Lando, he tries to make that cut over to try to get in front of Max. Max, because he's not moving, because he's not turning that wheel, he's going straight like a drag race, and he pulls up next to him and then goes into whatever turn it may be, and he gets ahead of him. And I'm just tired of it. I sat there, was like watching the Dolphins on Sunday. It's like you see them, they're doing good, they're doing great, and then all of a sudden, the Colts got ahead of them and was like, all right, they can't do anything else. They can't come back. They're not able to pull back ahead. And you get close at the very end, and then Huntley gets hurt, and then you got Tim Boyle coming in, and that's pretty much what happened as soon as Lando got that penalty at the very end. It's like when they put Tim Boyle in for the Dolphins, you just knew it wasn't going to be good at the end of the
man,
whole thing.
This was a rough
This is a dark turn, man. It's a dark turn.
It was. It's my guy. Lando's my guy. He's the guy.
I mean, but the Dolphins, come on, man. That's not fair.
Listen, it's
hey, it was a tough weekend for the NFL.
It's a tough time in the Sones family or the Sones house right now with what's going on with the Dolphins. So but either way, it's like I want to see him dictate. I want to see him go out there and run his race. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Don't worry about what Max is doing and how or where he's trying to put his car. Just go out there and do it.
Great ones, man. That's
it is. It really is.
And if he wants to be great, he has to do that, which leads right into now Max building a little bit of a larger lead in the World Championship. Now it's up to 57 points. So eating away at that lead is tough, man. If it grows larger, you got 5 races left, 57 points is tough, right? If anything, Leclerc is closer to Lando now at 22 points behind. And if he keeps driving the way he's driving and Lando, struggles down the stretch here in the last five races, then that could change as well. But I think that if Max just continues to get on the podium and score some solid points, either 1, 2, or 3, I think he's going to put this thing away in the next couple of races. I think it's going to be tough for Lando to come back after that. I mean, it's a valiant effort. He did a great job. He's got his team in first place right now in the constructors. But looking at it here, you got 1 through 5. It's Max, Lando, Charles, Oscar, and Carlos Sainz. So you've got McLaren and Ferrari in the top 5, and then 1 Red Bull, and then the rest. You still got Lewis in the top 6, top 10, let's just say, but at 6, and George Russell right behind them, and then you've got the Red Bull, Fernando Alonso, Nico rounding out the top 10. Haas.
This is over for Lando. That was it. He had to make up points every week, and also have at least one weekend where Max DNFs and he gets like a huge point differential. And
right,
he lost 4 points this weekend because the sprint race as well. But more importantly, he lost a race off of his remaining. So 5 races, 57 points. Unless their new papaya rules are Piastri just crashes into Max on purpose at the start of the race. This isn't happening. No, he's going to need 2 DNFs from Max. 5 races. At least, right? Yeah, I think 2 will get him in play essentially. Yeah. He'd also need to capitalize on those and win those races.
And that's to say that the McLaren won't have some sort of a
right. No, he needs 2 DNFs from Max to be in play. That obviously is not happening. These cars are way too reliable for that now. Back in the day, you could have 2 blow-ups in the last 5 races easily, not anymore.
It's funny you mentioned that, right? Because there hasn't been a lot of DNFs this year. There hasn't been,
what ends up happening? Because what ends up happening is because of the engine penalties, they build the cars more reliable. Yeah. So you don't really have those. Like these cars last now because they have to.
Right.
You can't. Every time they take an engine past their allotment, they get penalized. So they're, even when they do that, it'll be rare. It'll be strategic. Let's go ahead and replace this because we want new parts. It's usually not. I mean, I can't remember a time we saw an engine let go this year.
No, I don't know if we have.
I'm sure we have. I can't remember the beginning of the season. So.
Did Max's engine let go in the beginning of the year? I think at Australia.
I think he did take a penalty for an engine.
Yeah,
he took a penalty in Spa, but I don't recall it blowing up. But
I think the engine blew up.
I'm sure Evan's right. Like I said, I can't even remember the main season at this point. So,
Don't ask me to remember.
but I mean, it's very rare that there's engines actually blowing up like they used to. Now, Jazz, you mentioned the constructors. Well, your team is making a charge here.
Yeah, they are. They're 8 points.
8
back.
points, and the constructors is basically tied.
Crazy, man. This is crazy.
This is what we call Checo, because
Yeah,
that man has brought Ferrari into play by just repeatedly underperforming. 8 points, and McLaren's up 40, which again in constructors is not that many. So there's really it's a 3-team.
It is when Checo is when the Checo effect comes into play.
but it's 48 points from Ferrari to leading the constructors is totally
That's
doable.
wild.
It's totally doable.
Yeah,
it's double points. You have there's a week we don't know. This weekend could potentially be one of them. We're gonna talk about this in a bit, but with the high altitude and some of these cars act weird here.
Yeah, they do.
If one of these teams at the top has a bad weekend, that could be it. So
absolutely. Also, so let's. You want to get into some news first?
Yep, we can do that.
All right, let's do it. So you mentioned it, right? Some crazy things could happen here, but there's extra time, extra practice time in Mexico for the tires, but also Red Bull's ride height adjuster. So talk to Vish. Talk to me a little bit about that. I didn't even get to see that. I saw the extra practice time, but not the.
Yeah. So there's a mechanism on Red Bull's car that allows them to lower and raise the front, like underneath it. They're claiming it was never used in a race. It's not technically illegal as a tool. What it is illegal to do is adjust that after when the cars are in park for May, which they theoretically could have done easily. Anyone else without that mechanism, you're talking about essentially rebuilding the underneath of the car. So it's obvious you did it. You take your penalties for touching but they theoretically could have covertly done it. The FIA says there's no evidence they did, and they're not putting a seal on it. So it would break the seal if they moved it, so you could tell. It's just, I think, there's no evidence they cheated. However, if there's a team that would cheat, and I would say, Toto Wolff made a good point. He's like, he was joking about it because obviously Mercedes nowhere close to the top, and it just doesn't appear like it's going to affect the championships. It looks like McLaren will probably win the constructors, and Max has been far and away the best driver of the whole year. And we don't even know when this is introduced. So the way this came out this weekend, there's rumors flying around that one of the teams had a cheat device under their car, and then Red Bull admitted to it and said they hadn't actually used it to cheat. But what Toto Wolff said, which I thought kind of makes sense, is, we have cost caps, we have spending limits. The amount of money and research and development it takes to build that mechanism to not cheat really doesn't make sense, because you can, before Park for May, you can swap the parts out all you want. Yeah, it's a little bit of labor time, but that's a drop in the bucket. It's a few hours of some mechanics working on the car versus, again, having an engineer design this thing, build it, test it, throw it in your wind tunnel, which again, Red Bull has limited wind tunnel time from their previous cheating. Doing all of that just so that you can, with a button, adjust it, or with the lever adjust it, instead of just having the mechanics swap out the parts, doesn't seem like a good use of your budget. Now, so whether or not they cheated, there's no evidence that they actually did it. And I have been, this is several years ago, not at this point, but I've been, behind the scenes in the F1 paddock, and they do, off hours when you're not allowed to touch it, they seal there's like tape over the entrances that, like, you can't go in there even if you work for the team, because there's curfew hours, you're not allowed in. So it would be hard for them to slip a cheat in there, but it also doesn't make zero sense for them to spend all those resources on that.
Not to cheat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't feel like the cost benefit on it does not add up either, right? Again, there's no evidence they cheated, and I don't honestly know how much of because the theory there would be, it's kind of similar to before they banned switching engine modes. You'd turn the engine up for qualifying, and then you would turn it down for the race because it needs to last through the race, and they banned that. So, but I don't know how much advantage there even is to, and Evan, you can weigh on this because you probably know better than I do, but okay, I'm my qualifying height on this thing, and then need to adjust it covertly for the race. It seems like not that, like, I don't know if there's that many tracks where you'd actually want to do that. Engine modes make sense because again, you're trying to conserve. You don't want full throttle the whole race will blow up in 20 laps, but something like this, it feels like if it's aerodynamically sound, you'd kind of want that for the race too. But Evan, I'll throw that over to you.
So, from what I'm hearing about the situation is from Red Bull's side of it, that this is just a mechanism that allows them to adjust the height of the floor, but in a sense of, oh, we're going to switch out the floor, and now we're going to adjust it to exactly where we want it to be. You have to have an engineer in the cockpit going in there and adjusting it, as well as somebody underneath the car who's, loosening things and allowing things to move around a little bit and then tightening it back up as soon as it's put at a height that they want it to be at. What everybody is saying is that during Parc Ferme, you're allowed to go in and adjust seat belts and pedal boxes because the seats are stuck in one spot. But if you think about like high end cars nowadays, the actual pedals are the things that move towards you. So the gas and the brake are the actual things that are moving towards you, not the actual chair moving. So you could adjust that if one driver's saying, oh, I feel like the pedals need to come just a little bit closer, and they're saying that on the Red Bulls, you can actually go down in that same spot and adjust that adjustment for the floor in the same area while you're saying that I'm just adjusting, the seatbelt or the brake pedal. So the detractors on this are saying that no, well, they can actually go in there and adjust their floor. Now, the advantages that makes is during qualifying, you can set your floor lower to try to get that aerodynamic, the advantage that you're going to get, in the aerodynamics to be able to run a faster one lap pace. But you have to remember, and a lot of people, maybe who are watching the show don't know this, these cars actually have a plank underneath them. They call it a wood plank. I think it's more of a composite, but that plank is what got George Russell in trouble. Or no, that was the weight. I'm sorry. The plank, gets teams in trouble because if they're running too low, they'll scrape off too much of that plank, and they measure that plank. So if you say, for instance, go through qualifying and you have it really low, so you can get that advantage of being that car being so low and stuck to the floor, and you have all that downforce, but then you want to raise it up a little bit during the race because you don't want to wear away that plank so much. Because if you raise it up a little bit, yes, you may be losing a little bit on the lap time, but look at qualifying laps compared to race laps. There's a big difference, and you don't want to scrape off that plank throughout the distance of the race, because then you're going to get penalized for that at the end of the race. So that's what a lot of the teams are saying, and that's what the consensus is that they were doing something like that. But again, there's no evidence to it. There's no evidence that anybody did that. There's no evidence that Red Bull, used that system. But it is a possibility, and it's something that if you think about it, it's like the system that Mercedes had a few years ago, where they were pushing and pulling on the steering wheel to open the toe on the tires to heat them up. They said that was just for heating up the tires, but you could use that as an advantage if you're fast enough and smart enough and good enough to be able to turn quicker as well.
Yeah, that thing. I think there's a little bit of a difference, right? In that was cleared by the FIA. It was a legal device. They banned it the following year.
Yeah,
which several F1 innovations have gone through that.
Mm-hmm.
So Mercedes got that device clear, and they said this is where it's giving us an advantage. Theoretically, they could have used it in the race, but I don't know. Any driver wants their steering wheel moving all over the place. They're trying to drive at speed, so I didn't really see a lot of that happening. But that is, that's a situation where they did get it cleared. In this situation, it wasn't. Doesn't really feel like there was a reason for. Again, it's a lot of money to invest in something that is clever and is novel and is interesting, but also to say, well, we didn't get any benefit from it at all, like we didn't use it, is why'd you bother?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of these over the years of Red Bull.
Again,
no definitive proof of their crimes. However, it feels like a statement we've been saying a lot. But anyway, let's see. Again, it didn't appear to affect. Obviously, this weekend they did enforce, that they can't They put a seal on it, so if it moves, it'll break the seal. Which is
Yeah.
actually, for those that aren't aware, that's how a lot of F1 validations are done. They put seals over like the gearbox and all these little parts of the car. The FIA does that. If you open it, it'll break it, and they know it's been tampered with. So that's how they enforce a lot of this stuff. So so that's pretty normal for them to say we're going to put a seal over this thing to make sure it doesn't move. So didn't look to affect Max at all, and Checo either, because Checo did the same crappy job he's been doing. Speaking of Checo, it's home Grand Prix. So Mexico Grand Prix, first run 1963. Obviously, there was a big gap in there. 71 laps, 4.3 miles. Couple of DRS zones. Evan, I think the big thing here is the altitude and messes with the engines, messes with the aerodynamics. What are your thoughts on this race?
Not one of my favorite tracks, honestly. I mean, it's a classic track. It's a historical track. It's good to watch for the most part. There's a lot of low speed corners that I really am not a fan of. I don't like that whole infield kind of, like underneath a big walkway. It's to me, it's just kind of a weird track. Like it's way too curvy in all the wrong places. And there's that one long straight in the back, the one start finish line straight, but it's like the start finish line starts so soon before, in the very beginning of that straight that it's like, there's no real racing in that. You never really see a DRS like track right there in the beginning of that front straight. There's a couple tracks that are like that, but not all of them are like that. And going into that first chicane into another long DRS straight, and then that whole sector 2, sector 3, it's a little wonky for me. I've done races on different platforms and stuff like that on this track, and it's not the funnest track in the world to race on, but it is, again, a historical track. It's good to have a race in Mexico. It's interesting to see the differences that they have to put on the cars when it comes to the aerodynamics, like you were saying, with the altitude. And I mean, you could just go ahead and look at like the lap record. It's Valtteri Bottas. I mean, this isn't a track that it seems like it's more competitive because of that, maybe. Because I don't know, it's just not one of those tracks I look forward to every year, but it's still an F1 race for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's once the novelty of it, look at this, it's going through a stadium wears off, you realize the track sucks. I think there's some, and like you said, the layout doesn't lend itself to a lot. The other thing that I'm kind of worried this race is going to be processional around is that these cars, it seems like as they've advanced more in this iteration of the car design, it's becoming harder and harder to overtake. The DRS does not appear to be as effective as it was like a year or two ago when they first introduced this new concept. It seems like this is typical F1, right? The teams figure out how to get back to what they want to do, which is put as much downforce on the car as they can without compromising top end speed. Downforce is what creates the wake that makes it difficult to overtake. So when they first rolled these cars out, there was a lot more passing as they hadn't gotten it right yet. And as we've seen the field bunch up more now, because they've all gotten better, right? They've all gotten better with their car designs, what they've developed. That just creates even more of that wake. And you're just like, we saw that in Austin this weekend, where it was just really difficult for anyone to overtake. You really need both DRS zones. You really need to be right there entering it, or you couldn't overtake. And I fear we're going to see something like you said. There's the long backstretch, and then it goes into another. It's one detection zone, but two segments. But that second segment has historically been too short. The one between turns 3 and 4. So it's got to be done the start finish straight, and that's coming just out of that twisty section where you tend to lose contact because you cannot follow that close.
Yeah,
and that's actually we saw that with Lando and Max. There was that twisty section in between the DRS zones in Austin that Max would just eke out enough of a gap, because if you try to follow closer than that, you lose all your downforce off the car. And I think we're going to see more of that this weekend.
For sure.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, yes. We can hear you. I know Jazz has to attend to business here. You want to throw some predictions out there before you leave us?
Yeah, sorry, I said I'm traveling tomorrow. We got everything set up. Yeah, real quick, I think that Max gets back on the board at P1, and I think it's going to be. I'm gonna go Max. I'm gonna go Max, Leclerc, Norris.
Okay.
And then my surprise is going to be. God, for the love of God, Boltas, get a point.
Oh man, I made that mistake last weekend, man. It's not happening. Well, not even close, but it is supposed to be a surprise. All right, so.
He's got the lap record here, and it was in these cars.
Unbelievable. So. All right.
All right.
I gotta get out of here, but
yep.
Talk to you guys.
Safe travels, man.
Thank you.
All right, see ya.
Yeah.
All right, so switching over to the tires. So we got the softest compounds C3 to C5 here,
which makes sense because of the tight, twisty bits of the track,
Yeah, shout out to Evan. Shout out. The Sones family is present and accounted for as usual. Good to have y'all. Yeah, I mean, so in terms of strategy, what do you think here? I think historically this has been more of a two-stop, but I feel like at this point, overtaking has become so difficult. I feel like it'll be a one-stop.
Yeah, I mean, we all thought that Austin was going to be a two-stop race with the resurfaced, layout and everything, but it ended up being a one-stop for most. That C3, that middle C3 tire, when it's the soft, it runs great. When it's the hard, it's kind of weird because it's like everybody wants to run the mediums, but then you put that hard on and they're running 30, 40 laps on it at different tracks. It's weird. It's just the tires this year. I think it's good that they're having this extra time for this race to try to dial in. I don't know if they can make a change on the tires. Are they allowed to do that?
I think this is to test the 25 tires.
Okay.
I think the extra time is to run some of those tires, but it's still more data, like you said, which they probably need. I just, at this point, unless I see something different, overtaking has become so difficult.
Sorry.
That's all good. It's like a hospital stop. And then overtaking has become so difficult, and especially this track, it's historically been hard to overtake on. Giving up track position to try even so. I think what's happened. You mentioned Austin. I think what's repeatedly happening at these races is the computer model shows the fastest way to get through the race is 2 stops. However, the overtaking has become so difficult. You get caught up, and functionally, it's slower. And so I think I kind of expect to see that again this weekend. It's hard for me to see a 2-stopper where you're able to work your way back through the field and overtake a bunch of cars and still have life in your tires to make the passes at the top of the field. Feels like, I don't know. It feels like a stretch. All right, in terms of the weather, should be dry and moderate climate, but again, I think the big atmospheric part of this is the altitude, which messes with the engine power. They'll all be down on power. Well, we lost you again, man.
Yeah, no, I don't know what's going on with this camera. I got it.
All right. Well, anyway, so I think that's the thing to watch is, engine power. Do we some wonky results there? In terms of the timing of sessions, it is Mexico, so we do get some decent hours on our. I will say, it's football season, as we talked about the Dolphins earlier, unfortunately. I kind of like having the races in the mornings. You can do this in the morning and then pivot to your football.
I kind of do too. I was thinking the same thing, man. Like
this is like right at 4 o'clock on Sundays. The race that's not great. 5 o'clock on Saturday, and then all the practice sessions are there on screen. Go ahead, Evan. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say it's true. It's like it's weird watching the race after football. Like, I'm so used to watching these races beforehand and being by myself, just watching that, and everything's good, and I'm enjoying my race, and then pivot into watching football afterwards. It's like it's so strange, but I'll tell you, I definitely picked the right couple weekends for this. I'm off all week, so I'm off. I was off this past Sunday. I'll be off this Sunday coming up. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm able to watch these races without having to do it with all the screens that we have at the beautiful Miller's Ale House. I get to watch it on my own screens wherever I am.
Yeah, so no, that's good to relax and enjoy the race. So again, that's Saturday at 4. Qualifying is, Sunday at 4. Qualifying is Saturday at 5. We will be out at the stadium. It's Miami, Florida State week. And obviously the practices are throughout Friday and into Saturday, but mostly afternoon and evening. So not bad timing wise if you're not an early bird. Some of these other races are not at the friendliest hours. All right, I think it is time, man. It is time for everyone's favorite segment, where Evan gives you intelligent predictions and I give you stupid ones. So let's start with you, Evan.
Are you kidding me? It's the opposite. It's the opposite all the time.
Oh wait, your family is not sympathetic.
Yeah, no, especially not my sister.
You know what? I'll defend my man here. It's a lot of crap going on when you're doing the show, and sometimes the technology because it's like a pit stop. Occasionally the bolt doesn't come off correctly. You get a little bit of a, but given the number of shows we do, a one camera slide off, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Sometimes you screw up your pit stop, but most of the time, in and out less than 2 seconds.
Sometimes you're Sauber, sometimes you're not, right? All right, so my predictions for the race, I'm gonna go with Max to win it. I'm gonna go with Max to win. I'm gonna take the easy way out with this one. I think that we've seen these Red Bulls are strong around here, and Max he just wants it more. It looks like the way that he was able to defend in Austin, it was masterful. It was fantastic, and that's me saying that as a Lando fan, where I wanted Lando to pass him right at the beginning of that whole stint and just stay ahead of him for the rest of the race. But Max really did a masterful job all the way up until where it should have been a penalty for both of them, in my opinion, but it wasn't. So I'm gonna go with Max winning the race, Lando second, and I'm going to give it to George in third. I think I'm going to go with George Russell in third. Like I said, he's got a lot of momentum coming off of this last week. I think that this might be an opportunity for him to kind of step up and, reassert himself up there in the top 3, which would be good. My surprise prediction for the race is that Checo isn't going to finish his last race in Mexico.
Checo
DNF. I think you're going to see him hyped up. You're going to see him come out there and say, "Oh my God, it's so great to be back here in Mexico, and it's so great to be here in front of all my fans." And he might overdrive it. Yeah, I'm still going to be here, and then he's going to overdrive it somewhere and put it into a wall on that final turn right there before the start-finish line, or try to make a move over somebody like Liam Lawson, who's wanting that seat next year, and put him into the wall or something like that. But that's my surprise, is I think that Checo's gonna miss out on finishing his last race in Mexico. How about you?
Yeah, well, let me clean up some of your family business. Your father has Ferrari winning again. Yep. Carly's got Lando, Max, and George with the surprise Colo Pinto top 10.
Well, that's not even a surprise. Yeah,
I still think you can get away with it now. Yeah. If he keeps putting these performances together, that's going to no longer count.
Pinto's been killing it, man.
But I mean,
the fact that he doesn't have a seat is ridiculous. The fact that
that
kid doesn't have a seat is ridiculous.
And apparently she's upset I defended you, but I will continue to do that. Anyway, all right. For me, I'm gonna go Leclerc wins from Carlos, and then I'm putting Piastri as third, because my surprise is I think this is the week Lando and Max DNF after Lando hunts Max off the track.
So you're calling a double DNF from them.
Yeah, well, I think at this point, after everyone spending the entire week calling Lando too soft, you're not ruthless enough. You got to go in there. Max is going to do the same thing that Max was. I was going to put his car in a position where you hit me or you stay behind me, and I think this time Lando's going to turn in.
So it's going to be an Austria all over again.
Yeah. No, I think. Well, in that case, Lando got him, and then he hit him. Yeah. In this case, I think he's going to do what he did in Austin, which is more, I will give I'll give the position up to the people behind us and make sure that we don't, that you don't get in front of me. And we saw this with obviously it's been several years now, but when he and Hamilton, were neck and neck, eventually it was the British Grand Prix where Hamilton's like, screw this, I'm just going to hit you. And, Max crashed out. Hamilton got a penalty that didn't matter because he won the race anyway. And that was kind of when that turned over. Then they started hitting each other repeatedly, culminating in, they hit each other in Monza where Max ended up on top of him. But they also, remember, they made contact in Brazil, contact in Saudi Arabia. That once you cross that threat, I think it's going to get there now with those two. Brandon's got Russell, Max, and Lando. You got a surprise pick? I will say Russell is coming around.
It's a pretty big surprise.
For
him to win. Yeah, but for him to win, though.
True. I don't honestly. I cannot believe it's me saying this to wrap this show up, but if he had a better car, yes. Because he's driving the hell out of that car and overperforming it. And if you put him in a car that was more competitive, he absolutely would be right up there. I think at this point he has matured as a driver to the point that he's now, like I said, the way he handled that race last weekend was kind of on point. Exactly what you need to do. Didn't get rattled by having to start from the pit lane and from getting screwed on a penalty, and just kept his head down. Even earlier this year, you would have heard him whining the rest of the race, get distracted and not really, and probably have finished behind Checo, right? Because it would have cost him time while he was distracted. Instead, he's just like, what? And then just, all right, screw it, we'll make the time up. And he went through and did it.
Yep. No, he did a great job.
All right, so again, Yep. Again, that race is that race is Sunday at 4, qualifying Saturday at 5, and then next week we'll be back Tuesday. We've got we'll review that, and then it's 3 in a row. So Brazil.
Talk about a track I love.
My mic. I don't know. Anyway, it's self-muted. Give me a thing saying muting your mic. I don't know. You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, it's now my turn. I need to switch the engine modes. Whatever Max, who was it? It was Carlos. put to driver's position 13 and click 3 switches, and then everything will be fine. So apparently I need to do that too. But again, we'll be back next week, review this race. I have to do some math at some point to figure out how close Max is to clinching. It's probably coming up soon. So we will be back next week for that. And thanks everyone for watching, and we'll talk to you then.
Good night, everybody.